We are with Coach John. Now, obviously, this is not my apartment where I normally do my podcast. Clearly, this is not my apartment, but we are on location, everyone. And I've got Coach John Williams here. I will spare all of my rambling about trying to explain everything that this man has done and is doing. I'll let him kind of talk upon that, but this is a very interesting time period because it's very timely, right? We are in the midst of the US Open. That's why you're here. But we got a chance to recently connect with each other in London. And I think the first time we actually met was last year around this time.
Correct.
For the US Open. So why don't you introduce yourself and let people know who you are, and then let's just get into some chat.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
Well, I go by Coach John. My name is John Williams. I am the owner and director of Axon Sport Performance, as well as Elevate with John, which is a coaching and consulting company where we basically teach leadership and the attributes and characteristics of high performance all over the world and in many different domains.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because, I've gotten to know you off camera.
Because I send you 80,000 memes and reels.
And yeah, you might be the person that sends me the most, or at least you're the most consistent.
Yeah.
And
It's actually a block on my schedule every day. Yeah.
really,
Yeah. Mindfulness, meditation, gratefulness, gratitude, task list, of work-related stuff. But then there's a 20-minute block of send reels and memes to friends.
wow. Okay, so it is actually something very specific, which is very interesting to me, because I think a lot of people would look at that and go, yeah, but social media is BS,
Right.
like we don't use social media in a beneficial way. But I think it's all perspective, because I do realize that every time I get a meme from you, it's causing me to think in a certain way. And it's like this unspoken conversation, right?
Right.
Because it's like you're sending it and I kind of understand why you're sending it,
Right.
but then it invokes a thought.
Yes.
And that's what's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some of it is just silly comedy that's just designed to, like, it's so out there that you have no choice but to laugh and be
Exactly.
entertained by it.
Exactly. So I do appreciate it. Keep them coming. And every once in a while, I throw some back at you because I'm like, all right, this is kind of one-sided, but like this man obviously likes his memes, so let me send a few out.
It's totally fine.
Okay.
It's totally fine.
All right. Well, let's let the cat out of the bag for the reason why you're here, which is you are, among many things, a tennis coach.
Right.
And before we started recording, I recounted the time that we were just recently in London, and like I knew this about you because I had seen some of your social media content that you put out, and I did some background stuff on you because I wanted to bring you into the whole Vivo Barefoot thing back in the day, when I met you last year. And as I was going through all that, I'm learning who you are. And I remembered that at that time, you were not a tennis player. So you're not the typical coach that goes from being an athlete to then going into coaching. And so when we were in London recently, I remember asking you, I was thinking, like, people who are hardcore tennis fanatics, right? People who usually play tennis, they kind of despise what's happening in the world of paddle and all these things, right? Because I would consider them the purists. And so I wanted to see what your thought was, to see if my if my thought process was correct. And so I just immediately was just like, he's a tennis coach, so yo, John, what do you think about paddle? What do you think about pickleball? You know, because I know that most people who play tennis and who are purists, they don't like that movement. And you're like, bro, I don't play tennis. You know, I never really played. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's
Plot
right.
twist.
Plot twist. So let's talk about both of those things, if you don't mind, because I think that's a very interesting conversation, and it gives this person the idea of the kind of conversations we might be having at the level that we have it at.
Sure. So I'll first begin by backtracking a little bit, and this may sound like semantics to some degree, but I'll correct your introduction because you
Please.
labeled me as a tennis coach.
Thank you.
And I don't consider myself as a tennis coach. I consider myself a coach who actually coaches a tennis player. The reason I say that is respectful, right? I'm being respectful. I'm being respectful to the men and women who dedicate their lives to becoming professional tennis coaches. That's their lane. That's their life's ambition and pursuit of study and their work. And whether they're good at it, great at it, doesn't matter. They've pursued this profession with earnest intention and hopefully integrity. And I think it would be doing a disservice saying that I'm that. I'm not that. Just like I know how to do chiropractic adjustments. I know how to do trigger point therapy. I know how to do needling, but I'm not a chiropractor. I'm not a physical therapist, right?
Yeah.
I'm not somebody who specializes in medical acupuncture. So yes, I coach on the WTA tour. I coach the #1 doubles player in the world, but I'm not a tennis coach. I'm a coach who coaches tennis.
This is what I love about this man, okay? Because there's a very specific way, certain way that, I mean, I'm not saying a person has to do it the way you did it, but there is a really specific way, because again, you reminded me of what I actually know, but even what comes out of my mouth is what happens to me as well. For instance, I happen to be a coach who does health coaching and fitness training for celebrities and things like that, but don't label me as a celebrity trainer.
A celebrity trainer,
Right.
right?
And also, like you, I can do massage and I can do acupuncture and I do all these things, cupping and all of it. But I'm not a chiropractor. I'm not a physical therapist.
Right.
And so I respect that. And I think it's worth people hearing, right? Because again, we are guys who happen to be working at a very high level, but we can also correct each other. We can also, we can come to points where we maybe don't agree on a certain topic, or,
For sure.
you know, because I know a lot of times behind the scenes we talk about LeBron and Michael Jordan
Right.
and Kobe and all these things. And you don't know if I agree with you or not,
Correct.
but I find it fascinating to see what level in which, you point out things that I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, okay. I think this is very interesting. And even in this moment, right? Like, let's call it what it is. He's a coach that happens to coach on the WTA tour.
Right.
Perfect. So
And
let's go into it.
That's relevant for me. It's very relevant for me because I think with the way that things are going now, right, with social media, with this perception environment that we live in, it's very easy for somebody to claim, in the military, they call it stolen valor.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So it's very easy for someone to claim stolen valor,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't want to be one of those guys. I've never been one of those guys. Like, if you came into any of the gyms that I've ever owned, any of my facilities that I've worked in, and you saw pictures of me with an athlete, they didn't just like stop in or come in with a friend that day and I was like, hey, can I get a picture with you? And then all of a sudden it goes on the wall and, oh, so-and-so trained here? Right? How much of that occurs in our industry? So I never wanted to be that guy. So I've got pictures with a lot of people that have passed through my facilities over the years, some of them extremely well known, but they're not on the wall.
Right.
Right? They're in my photo album, but they're not on the walls because I don't want to give the impression that I did or participated in something that I didn't do.
Yeah.
So I call it checking pedigrees. That's what I've been on lately. Like, for those of you who, follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of that lately because there's a lot of that. It seems like it's seasonal too. Like a certain time of year, they all emerge from the dirt or whatever holes they were hiding in, and they are all of a sudden the best at what it is they're doing this year, right? And I'm like, well, where's your track record, buddy?
Oh man. And it brings up so many things, but I digress, right? Like we can go down that rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah.
We can easily go down that rabbit hole. So,
Sorry, I took you
no,
sideways.
no. This is, I love it. I mean, I already knew this was going to be a fun conversation, and who cares if the audience doesn't like it? I'm going to have a good conversation with you. So let's talk about what you do
Yes.
then, right? Like let's help define, because who knows, maybe there's somebody out there in my community that's like, I want to work with someone like that,
Gotcha.
right? So let's talk about what you do.
Sure. So what I say my 9 to 5 is coaching a professional tennis player on the women's tour. And that involves a couple of different attributes and or facets. The first is where we started was I was in charge of the physical preparation part. So I handled everything physical. I did the rehab, I did the conditioning, I did all the performance stuff, everything, the nutrition, I did everything. And then that relationship continued to grow. I established a high degree of trust because of proficiency in performance, right? Not because I spit a good game, or because, my social media following is in the hundreds of thousands. It's not, but hypothetically, but because of result, right?
Right.
And there was a period of time where, there was some uncertainty in her future, and she had to deal with some changes internally and externally. And she asked me to come on as her full-time tennis coach. And I said, I don't play tennis, right?
That's huge, man.
And the second part is, I just moved to Portugal with my family. Like literally that happened. We moved in 20. She asked me to coach her in 21 when I was back here kind of managing my gym. I still had a facility here at the time.
Wow.
So I was like, well, we need to figure out how to do this. And we talked back and forth. Anyway, fast forward, we made it work. And so that's kind of my 9 to 5 right now.
It says a lot about you as a person, but also as a coach.
But I'm crazy.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think there has to be a little bit of crazy in
Obviously,
like, right?
you're right,
Like,
you're right.
like, of course. But it also goes to show, because like I mentioned before, people at a certain level, they have access to almost anyone. So why is it they work with you? And it's clearly, like you pointed out, the proficiency and the results, and I think sometimes fate has to come into it as well, and being
Sure.
in the right place at the right time, and whatever you consider luck to be, when preparation meets opportunity, right? We talk about that, because even in my career, I always say that definition of luck is just the starting point, because whenever I got into what I was doing at the beginning of my career, which it was preparation meets opportunity, but then it was having the right skill set. And I didn't have anything holding me down. I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. My family was all in Oklahoma, right? So I was able to take the risks that I maybe can't take today,
Right.
or that I wouldn't take today,
Right.
right? I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have all these things. And so all of that had to come together at the right time to be able to say yes, and then the other party say yes, Okay, so what does it look like then? Do you typically find yourself in a gym? Because, I want to get to the piece in which we both are very similar, very aligned, which is the electrical muscle stimulation piece, right? So like, how does that weave its way into what you do?
Sure. Well, as you know, any professional athlete that plays a traditional sport, even now, I guess I can backtrack and say any professional athlete, because even in motorsport now, in golf, thanks to Tiger, created a revolution and an understanding that the more physically fit you are, the more physically prepared you are, the easier your job is, right? So in tennis, especially because it's a very physical sport, not only can you perform your job at a higher level consistently, but your durability and longevity also get improved. So on the physical side, I was already there. I was already doing that. And I brought all of that to the coaching side. The only addition was, talking tactics, and we did a lot with swing mechanics and revolutionizing how she was able to actually strike the ball. And that was a result of physics. That's science. So the way that I coached on the physical side was very scientific and principle based anyway. And because I played racket sports growing up, it wasn't tennis, but I understood kind of the relationship between string and ball and that sort of thing. And I took everything else that I had been involved in and overlaid that to certain movement patterns, certain energy system training, and all of these components kind of rolled into one, which makes Coach John.
Right.
So when you give me a direction to point it at, it becomes very easy once I understand the requirements of the thing.
Right.
So if you triathlon, for example, I think it was probably 2016 or 2017, just after the Olympic Games in Rio, that I worked with my first professional triathlete.
Oh, interesting.
Who flew up from Brazil and stayed for 3.5 weeks with me in Georgia. Now, prior to that, I had never worked with a professional triathlete.
Wow.
But when I was in Brazil, I watched her ride and I pointed out a couple of things. She tried it through a translator, of course. It wasn't very good. She tried it, immediately saw a change in time. And I did the same thing with her running. I did the same thing with her, conditioning program, her training program. And she immediately saw changes and said, I don't know who this guy is, but I need to work with him, obviously, because he's been here for 2 days and I've made more improvement in these 2 days than I have in the last, 2 months. So, but for me, I'm looking at biomechanics. I'm seeing an image, a picture, and then I understand how to, kind of overlay the X's and O's in order to get what I want that picture to look like.
It's really fascinating because I understand it.
Yeah.
And we have talked about this a little bit, and we've even gotten very deep into talking about things like, I didn't bring it with me, but my company has developed a electrical muscle stimulation bodysuit, and I know you have a system as well. And we were, and I shouldn't even talk about it like in the past, because hopefully we still doing something together at some point. But let's talk about that. We don't have to go too crazy deep, but I'm always fascinated when I meet someone who understands and utilizes
EMS
within their sport, because it's like, we might understand it and appreciate it for ourselves, but when you take it to the level of which you're working with your athletes that you work with, or the people that you work with in general, and same with me, that's another level.
Sure.
That means, you're putting your name on the line,
right.
Your reputation on the line because of this. And we already know we're fighting an uphill battle, because there's a lot of other people out there like, that's BS. Right. And we know it's not.
Right.
But can you talk a little bit about that? Even just kind of how you use it, or, what your system is all about?
Sure. So in 2012, I began working on what I consider to be my final version of my dream device. Now, I'll back up a little bit. In 2009, 2010, I was exposed to a couple of different EMS units that did very different things. I was very impressed with several of them and the ability to elicit certain responses from the human body, both in a training context, but also in an injury recovery context.
Bingo.
And after a lot of cajoling, negotiation, and a lot of money spent with this one particular company, the business relationship didn't work out, but the technology was solid. And I said, I need to incorporate this into what I'm doing going forward. And then became kind of the conundrum. I don't have access to the business side of it anymore. So that means that my hardware, although I have it now, eventually it's going to wear out, fail, require servicing, right? I always say if it's made by man, it's going to break. It's not a matter of if, it's just when.
When?
Right. So I knew that that was a finite period, and then I'd be kind of up the creek without a paddle if I waited when I got to that point. So I started thinking, well, what if I were to craft my own device? What would I want to take? What were the best pieces and parts? And how do I make this dream machine? And that began the quest. So that was around 2011, 2010, 2011. And then in 2012, after about a year and a half of working on it, we had a couple of prototypes, and I had settled on one version that I really liked and said, okay, this is going to be it. Let's now refine this and make it great.
Mm-hmm.
And then we launched in 2013. We started selling units, and it's been uphill ever since. So the way that I incorporate EMS, which I think was your question,
Yeah.
it was initially in...
And by the way, sorry.
Yeah.
EMS, for those who don't know, I think if you watch this show, you already know, but it is electrical muscle stimulation or electro muscle stimulation.
Yes.
Didn't.
So the way that we began using EMS started out, I was searching for any tool that could allow me to enhance performance, but in a leapfrog fashion. So we understand what traditional periodization looks like, right? You do a certain thing for a certain amount of time, and that elicits an environment within the human body, and then the human body responds by what we call supercompensating, or growing exponentially as a result of. So what I was looking for was a way to really make that supercompensation curve, instead of kind of like this, make it go like that without increased risk, without gambling, basically. I wanted something that was a bit more predictable, a bit more conservative in the risk that we were taking for the rewards that we were trying to gain.
Yeah.
Right.
High risk comes high reward.
Exactly.
But yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with multi-million-dollar athletes or juniors who are at the beginning of their athletic career, that risk is often very much not worth the reward.
Bingo.
You have to play the long game, right? So that's where it started. I was greedy. I was looking for more. I had a phenomenal training system that I was really, really pleased with. We were getting incredible results, but I was like, if I could just find this one thing that could help push me over the edge a little bit more, then I think we'll be great. And that's what it was. So that's where it started. And then along the way, we figured out, hey, you know what? This electrical muscle stimulation stuff it's got a root in therapy. That's crazy, because there was a guy back in ancient Rome named Scribonius Longus who actually used the torpedo fish as a therapeutic modality for his patients with gout.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, if that were the case back then, what's happening now?
Yeah.
And then you skip forward through history, and you see that the Russian space program, they were using EMS for their cosmonauts. Why? Because you can't take weights into space.
That's right.
And if you can simulate load in an anti-gravity environment, you can stop bone density loss. You can maintain muscle mass and conditioning, all of these cool things. And they actually found out that there were exponential strength gains as a result of using EMS, very short exposures, but high intensity over a period of time. So all of this research was out there, but we just were limited to what you saw in the training room or what you saw in the kiosk in the mall with TINS unit, right?
For sure. So yeah, the infomercials where you're eating pizza,
six pack or whatever.
Yeah.
So I took all of that and aggregated it and used that to kind of act as the impetus to create this, this device. And we took that device and then we started, using it in a rehab context, and we saw amazing results. And then we used it in the training context where we saw amazing results. And we integrated it in our program on a regular basis. We used it, we've got we've got a loosening or a pre-competition, a pre-prep program that we use, and then your training stimulus, and then in the training stimulus, you might have some of that, and then recovery post-training. And we had amazing results and still do.
Yeah.
So I took all of that and brought that with me into tennis.
It's amazing.
And now we have an athlete that, plays basically 26, 27 weeks a year. And with the exception of 2 rolled ankles, has not had to retire or withdraw from any competition in the last 3.5 years.
It's incredible.
And the one rolled ankle this year was actually both rolled ankles, because they happened overseas on a clay court, and it was court maintenance. That was the problem. One of them, the lines on the court was like 1.5 inches raised and just caught the edge of the shoe as she was going out. So it could have happened to anyone.
Wow.
The second one, the first one happened as a divot was in the court. So
Wow.
didn't have anything to do with the physical preparation part. It was just bad luck.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy that you have your experience that you have and are able to talk about it in the way that you do, because it's very different. Obviously, our experience in understanding or learning about EMS is very different. But I like how you speak about it, because when I speak about it, I try to, is the reason why I even have this show is to try to like take complex thought patterns or processes and try to dwindle it down. I don't like to say dumb it down, but I like to try to get it to its most remedial level so that anybody can understand what it is, right? And what I think is interesting about you describing how you've been using it, especially in tennis, but in many of the things you do, is that we try to get the most bang for the buck. And the buck in this scenario is the time, right? And so a lot of people forget that physiological training, so like physical training, going to the gym and lifting weights and doing all these things, elicits us a physiological response, which is breaking down of the tissue in a certain way, creating these little micro tears and micro traumas. And a lot of people think that that is the part of the process that gets us bigger, makes us stronger, improves in performance. But it's actually the recovery from that, right? And so if a person is trying to get the most out of their performance, I'm one of the first ones to say we need to be focusing on recovery as much as we're focusing on the performance in the gym and on the court, right? We need to be recovering. And so what's cool about EMS is that we can get to that physiological breakdown part faster, more efficiently, more effectively, which then hopefully you can use the same EMS technology to then recover you faster as well. And then of course you pair that with your nutrition and all the other concepts that you might employ. This is why it's so powerful. This is why I use it. I've been a fan of EMS for a decade now, and it's been quite transformative, but yet we don't hear people talking about it that much.
No. And you raised some very great points there, because
We're just making sure it's still good.
Okay. You raised some very great points there, because in the breaking down process, there's that risk versus reward thing again, right? So if you're dealing with somebody who's 70 years old and sedentary, not our typical clientele, but maybe it's an aunt, maybe it's a grandmother, right? You're dealing with somebody who's in that state. Well, we know that bone density and balance and neuromuscular coordination are the 3 things that are guaranteed to diminish with aging, male or female.
Yeah.
More prevalent, more significant in females because of their structure to begin with, but equally present or absent in males. Well, squatting would be great for grandma. Deadlifting would be great for grandma. The spinal loading, the structural loading, right? But how do you do that and introduce a load that is going to have immediate physiological effect without the risk associated with it, because she's untrained, she's weak, and structurally she doesn't have the integrity to be able to sustain those loads? How do you do that? I asked that question. The conventional exercise doesn't have an answer. There is no way to do it. Look at what they did with the treadmill. When you're coming back from a stress fracture, they put you on an Alter G treadmill, right?
Yeah.
Right. Which is the opposite of what you need,
Of course.
right? But that's a different thing. So conventional exercise doesn't have an answer for that question, but EMS is the answer.
Exactly.
Because just like, okay, we're going to fast forward now, because the same principles apply, whether we're talking about Granny or whether we're talking about somebody who's an Olympic level weightlifter. Okay. They need loading to create the stimulus, to create the response.
Exactly.
It's physiological,
Yeah.
right? So if we can make the body think that you're squatting 700 pounds, even though you're not, there's no risk of a spinal fracture. There's no risk of a blown ligament in your knee, ankle, or hip. There's no risk of a muscle tear. But your body still thinks that you're squatting 600 pounds. It's going to then respond as if you were squatting 600 pounds.
Love that you say this. And again, this is the part where I want to try to make it easier to understand for the person listening who doesn't understand this. So what he's talking about is that you can put a certain amount of stress onto the system, the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, the bones, from shearing, right? Like a shear force. So you can get the shear forces from running and stopping quickly.
Right.
But you can also get this sliding and gliding of the muscles happening at a very deep level. So you can kind of mimic, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Exactly.
Mimic
The loading.
right? And so now, mind you, when I first started talking about it on social media, and I've got a lot of friends who are your traditional strength and conditioning coaches, love them, but they were some of the first ones to come after me. Yeah, but this is not true loading. You need to get the loading. And so I go, okay, I'm not going to be the person that goes, you're wrong, and I'm not going to hear them out. So then, you know what I started doing? I started continuing to keep the concepts of EMS because I understand those concepts work really well. There's a lot of research there. So then I started to find out other ways to load, which was vibration plate training. So I was combining the two and still like eventually getting them to do the same kind of movements that you first talked about, like deadlifting, squatting, and things like that. But maybe instead of doing, 10, 30, 50 reps with load, like increasing the volume in that way, I would just increase the frequency of the vibration plate, increase the frequency of the hertz in the EMS, and still have them do movements, but maybe less movements. Right. So instead of doing 50 squats, they might do 5. Right. And this is how my mind works. And that all came from criticism online. So this is why I'm happy you're talking about it. And I welcome the criticism. I'm pretty sure you do too. But like the proof is in the, it's in the pudding. Proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. You want to say about it?
Let me jump in there because I think early on I had a lot of debates. We've got units in University of Alabama. We got University of South Carolina. We've got units in some big schools, some big Power D1 schools. Anyway, it was always a massive hurdle to get past the gatekeepers, right? And that usually means that the athletic training or physical training, physical therapy department, the training staff there was, hard. So what we used to get pushback on was it's not the same loading. And I would say, what do you mean it's not the same loading? Well, physiologically, having a barbell on your back or pulling something from the floor is not the same physiological loading patterns as you would encounter as if you, were just training with EMS. And I said, really? Are you sure you're not talking about the skill-based conundrum, right? So you're talking about lifting something off the floor. That's a particular skill in the pattern that's required to do it efficiently.
Yeah.
But the loading is the same.
Ooh.
And if you think it's different, I'm more than willing to listen. Can you illustrate to me how? Because if you remove the skill aspect of it, how is the loading different? You still have axial loading.
Right. Yeah. Please educate.
You still have axial loading. You still have the need for stability. The proprioceptive demand is still very high.
Yeah.
Because they're still moving. Now, if we were static, that's different.
That's right. Which is why I'm assuming you do the same thing I do.
You incorporate movement.
You incorporate movement.
And
Yeah.
if you incorporate high speed movement and high velocity movement, either on a concentric, the way up, or eccentric, the way down, now you get the benefits of plyometrics
Bingo.
involved as well.
Bingo.
So I said, why don't we do a case study? I'll take a person of adequate fitness level, not a collegiate D1 athlete, but adequate fitness level. You know, they train maybe once or twice a week. I don't care what they do. Doesn't matter, because it's going to be a simple strength test. You put them through a strength program for 4 weeks. I don't even want to know what you're doing with them. I don't care till after the test is over. Doesn't matter. And then I'll put them through a strength program for 4 weeks. And we'll test the squat, the deadlift, and the standing long jump. My person, after going through my strength program, almost 120% increase
Wow.
in their deadlift.
And what period of time?
4 weeks.
Wow.
Almost 120%. It was like 119.2 or something like that. The squat was 80-something% increase. They went from being able to squat their body weight for 3 reps, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think the person was 175 pounds, something like that. For an untrained, you know, just I work out casually a couple of times a week. That's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the form was good. They went from being able to squat their body weight for 3 reps to being able to squat 1.5 times their body weight for 15.
Yeah. 1.5 times their body weight for 15
For
reps.
15 reps. Yeah.
So 5 times more reps. And would that be 50% increase in the load? Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. In 4 weeks.
So this is what I mean, right? And another thing to add on to all of this, right? Because so obviously what you did is very specific. But one of the other things that I think is very interesting for performance athletes, if you do EMS correctly, you can get to the fast twitch muscle fibers much faster. It's almost instantaneous, right? There are some that will debate that, but it's almost instantaneous. And we know what it takes when you're not using EMS to try to affect the fast twitch muscle fibers. It takes time.
I don't know how they can debate, but that's not the case.
People try to debate everything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because, you know, the muscle fiber delineation, how your body chooses what fiber type it's going to recruit is all based on frequency. And the frequency is dictated by speed of the movement and or speed of load, like how fast your body has to deal with the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And speaking of skill, you know how you said it's skill-based?
Right.
So there's the skill in like Olympic movement
Yes.
and whatever. And then there's the skill of trying to get to activating fast twitch muscle fibers.
Yes,
Talk about skill-based learning. I mean, that's hard.
exactly.
So you, like you said before, increase the risk. Hopefully you increase the reward, but you got to hope that you're even proficient enough to even have the skill to increase the risk enough to even affect the fast twitch muscle fibers. So it's just like,
Yes.
wow.
So the fun part
Yeah.
was, and I didn't even give you this stat, the standing long jump.
Ah,
So after the traditional training program, standing long jump went from 84 inches to 87 inches or somewhere thereabouts, 87 and a half. The standing long jump after my training program went from 84 inches to 114 inches.
it's like, come on, man.
And it was a visible difference. Like if I showed you the video and I blocked out the person's, you know, face and any like describing features of them, you'd be like, this is two different people. Like
Wow.
this is two different people jumping here, because the initial movement, the initial impulse of explosion looks completely different.
Well, there you have it. I mean, I don't know if that's any more clear to someone, but it's at least worth looking into.
I got one last thing.
Please, please.
This was in a 37-year-old man.
Those results you're talking about?
So way post puberty.
Wow.
Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
So that kind of performance gain, all of that unrealized physical performance and ability just left dormant, untapped. But we can access that.
See, and this is why I love talking with you about these things, is because I know you get it, I know you understand it. But it's not that we even are in an echo chamber when we talk about it, but it's more or less like, oh, okay, so the system you use is different than the system I use. How can we bring those together? And hopefully that's something we end up doing, because the system that I use is a wireless system that uses DC current, which I know we talked a lot about. There's some really amazing biological benefits with the DC current versus AC current. Our body is more physiologically or biologically compatible to the DC current, direct current. And so there's also some really interesting ways that you can get into this like super therapeutic levels, in which my suit doesn't do, but I know yours does. And so if there's a way we can incorporate those, because the way mine is set up, at least the consumer version that we haven't rolled out with and launched yet, is because, you know, there's all the clearances you have to go through and all the things, but it's a suit in which it looks like a wetsuit. You put it on, you zip it in the front. You have a battery pack that is basically the brains of the whole operation. And you finish your workout, you take off the battery pack, you throw the thing in the wash, let it hang dry, you know, and then rinse and repeat, right? This is why that's pretty interesting, and why a lot of my clients are super intrigued by it, because it doesn't have to be a professional athlete or a high performance athlete to use it. You know, some of my, like one of my oldest, more mature clients that I have has several of these suits, because he understands it. In fact, it was the reason why I was able to go on tour with him, is because I had that technology. Right. And so for me, I was like, oh, because when I first found out about it, I thought EMS is going to change the game in fitness. And yet here we are, still kind of like, people are like, wait, what? EMS? I thought that was like the ambulance and like, you know, emergency medical services. Well, it is. But what we're talking about is something that I think everybody should look into, at least at some point.
Agreed.
Enough on that.
But not for the, you know, coaches. You guys stay in the Stone Age.
Yeah, I mean,
go for it. It's more food for us. That's fine.
Absolutely, because it's coming. Even though, I mean, because in Europe, it's almost like Starbucks. It's like on every corner. You can find an EMS. You can just search EMS fitness or whatever, and you're gonna find different things. Now, obviously, there's different levels and there's different things, just like I would say with most everything we have in today's world. But as long as a person understands that there is some benefit in the world of EMS and TENS therapy, then all ships rise with the tide. That's how I see it. Right? Then you want to come to the best and the people who are most experienced, people like him, like this guy. Then you know. So, how long have we had? All right, I don't want to go too much longer, but I feel like we could talk forever and ever and ever, because we do, right? Let's talk about maybe, and without giving too much away, because I know you're very conscious of the people you work with, and so am I. So if you could maybe identify something that is overlooked that has maybe helped you and helped you in helping your athletes, is there something that kind of always creeps up amongst the group of them?
You touched on it earlier. I mean, everybody's been so focused on performance, which arguably I was in the early part of my career. So focused, so dead set on, you know, locking in on every single thing I needed to do to enhance performance, that nobody paid attention to recovery.
Mhm.
And, you gave a great example earlier of, recovery is equally, if not more important than what you do in the gym. The easiest way and simplest way that I use to describe it is the human body operates off of a very basic principle, and it's stimulus and response. The training, whatever type of training you're doing, whatever the thing you're doing that puts your body under load, that stresses the body, is the stimulus. The response to that is largely dependent on the type of stress, the amount of stress, the frequency of the stress, but it responds in proportion to the stress. So if I dump you in the middle of a foreign country where you don't speak the language and you have no way to communicate other than to learn the language, that's going to be very, very stressful, right?
Mhm.
But that is the stimulus. The response is going to be, you're going to learn the language faster and be able to communicate faster than someone would if they were just taking the classes in that language 2 times, 3 times a week for an hour. So the stimulus and the response. So the stimulus is the starting point, but what carries you across the finish line, what gives you the results, the outcomes that you want, whether it's the growth if you're trying to get bigger and more muscular, whether it's the endurance if you're trying to improve your work capacity, or the speed and power if you're trying to improve your work rate. All of those things are just, they happen in response to the stimulus that you give it. Well, what governs the response is your ability to recover from the stimulus. So if you don't have stimulus recovery, then you can't have response.
Ooh, I can't wait till hopefully we get somebody that, you remember I told you about the guy who draws the graphs and stuff?
Yes.
He all of his videos go viral because it's so really cool. It's really cool how he does it.
Nice.
It's like a time lapse. I want to see if I can get him to do what you just did. Stimulus response. He's like, I love it. I love it.
Fantastic.
It's
yes,
very
recovery. Recovery. I mean, perfect example. My players played a lot of tennis over the last 3-4 weeks. So we had a gym session yesterday, which lasted about, true work was about 35, 40 minutes. It was a mix between some lifting, some dynamic movement, full range of motion, loaded mobility is what basically I call it. And did I say conditioning or cardio?
No.
Okay. So some cardio, we opened with cardio. We did some loaded mobility, and then we finished with some very specialized core work and some boxing drills, actually. But that was it for yesterday. And then she got an hour and a half, almost 2 hours of body work last night, but no tennis. We hit no tennis balls. Today, completely off, not hitting any tennis balls today as well. So a day and a half, basically, of complete recovery from the movement patterns, the physiological demands of the sport. Tomorrow we'll be back on court, and we go from there. I expect her to be fresh and like chomping at the bit and ready to go.
Yeah, it's like taking a basketball player. I remember when I was growing up playing basketball, I played all through school and went on to play professionally overseas. And I'll never forget. I think it was one of my college coaches. It was at the junior college. When I first got to junior college, I distinctly remember, coach would have a rack of balls at mid-court or on the sides.
Mm-hmm.
And if a player came in and grabbed the ball and went to go shoot, we had to run laps. He wanted us doing all the untangibles or the intangibles, all the things that was outside of shooting the ball,
Right.
scoring.
Right.
Work on so many other things. Work on stretching. Work on running. Work on jumping. Whatever. But it's like he doesn't want you going straight to shooting the basketball.
Right.
Now obviously if you're a shooter, maybe you spend that time before and after, right? Getting the shots up, because that is part of the thing. But there's so much more to the sport of basketball than just shooting the ball.
Exactly.
Right?
It's a
Yeah, it's very, very fascinating. I'm excited to see how things go with this tour, and we'll definitely be watching. Before we wrap up, though, because I mean, clearly, I think we're gonna have you back on because I would imagine the person that's watching and listening wants to hear more and see more, and maybe you have some questions that we can ask Coach John. But I want to talk about briefly, and we can wrap up with this, but I want to talk about a concept that is way outside of performance and things like that. Just being good humans, right? And whether it be a good friend or a good, husband or son or father or whatever, right? Just being a good person. And so, we've seen each other several times over the years, and a lot of our communication has been over the phone, and we always seem to stay in touch, which is great. I think when you meet someone and you connect, it's a responsibility on both sides or all parties concerned to keep that conversation going,
Right.
to keep that communication, that connection going. And so I happened to be in London. You were in London, and that was for the
Wimbledon.
Wimbledon. There you
Right.
go. I don't play tennis that much. I'm getting there. And that was when I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this, where I asked you that question about, what are your thoughts on paddle and pickleball? So I do want to talk about that.
Okay.
But before we finish, I want to talk about how we left it, and that'll be a great way to leave this conversation as well. So
Got it.
I asked you this question because I've noticed that people who are purists with tennis tend to not like paddle and pickleball. People who maybe aren't that much into the tennis or find tennis to be very difficult, I find that they love paddle and pickleball. And I think it's because it's a lower barrier of entry on the previous two that I mentioned.
Right.
So I asked you that question. That's when you corrected me. I'm not a tennis player. But what are your thoughts on it?
I am a big fan of paddle, largely because it reminds me of, it has a lot of the characteristics of racquetball, which I grew up playing, and played it at a fairly high level when I was, really into it and competing. So I liked that immediately. I didn't really understand the game when I first saw it and got exposed to it. But when we moved to Europe and I was around it a lot, I was like, whoa, this is cool. So I'm a big fan of paddle. I think that it is almost the perfect hybrid between, kind of racquetball and tennis, which is cool for me because I have a foot in both worlds. Currently, I'm in tennis, but my past was very much entrenched in racquetball. So I get to play off the walls like I did in racquetball. I get to play angles on shots like I did in racquetball, but also there's a net now.
Yeah.
And that's a component that we never had to deal with in racquetball, but you do have to deal with that all the time in tennis. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
I think of the two, it's probably easier to become more proficient faster in pickleball than in paddle.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
I think it's great for people who are looking to get involved in some type of ball and paddle or racket sport that don't really have the physical capabilities and or the skill sets that would allow them to learn how to play tennis quickly, or because if you can't play with somebody, then it's not fun.
That was my point.
So I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand it from a social thing. I never looked to play sports for social reasons.
Heard.
I wanted to play stuff because I liked it. And then once I was playing it, I wanted to become really good at it. That was my interest, but that's me. Everybody has their own reasons for getting involved in things. And I'd say applause to anybody who's doing something physical aside from, scrolling on their phone or watching YouTube or, just sitting in front of the TV. You're out and you would rather be with a group of people on a court chasing a ball around rather than sitting in front of your TV. Good for you. Go for it. Do more. Right?
It's a golf club.
Yeah.
Respect. Okay. So now I'm painting this picture, right? So John and I, we met at Covent Garden. Which
Shout
was
out to
yeah,
Garden.
yeah. Which, by the
Burger
way,
was quality.
amazing. I forget what's the name of that place. Do you remember? I forget the name of the place, but it's worth a shout out.
I don't. Our server actually had a Brooklyn
Yeah,
T-shirt or something
that's
on,
right.
didn't she?
That's right. Well, it's interesting because let's see, was it that trip or was it another trip? But I ran into your daughter.
It was that trip.
It was that same
Yeah, a
trip.
few days earlier.
Okay, so it was a
Yeah.
few days earlier. I knew I was gonna be meeting you at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into her randomly, which is like crazy. And then I happened to run into a trainer friend of mine just before I ran into her.
Okay.
So it was just like all these synchronicities were alive.
The
And well,
universe was aligned.
for sure. So if you can imagine, right, we had this amazing lunch. We ate burgers, healthy burgers, and we had this very deep conversation in which, you know, we talk about some of these concepts. And so when we were leaving, it was like, okay, it's time to leave. So for me, and I think for most men, we tend to pick up the bill, right? This is how things go, right?
I'll nod in agreement.
And so when two guys are together and two guys who are secure in themselves and what they do, it's just like at some point it's one or the other's gonna get it.
Right.
And you know, if it's a large group or whatever, and I wasn't even really sure who suggested to meet in person and go eat. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
I had a really good conversation. The last thing I would want to happen is to have it thwarted by, hey man, you're gonna split this, or how much, you know.
Right.
So I'm like, hey, it's time to go, let's leave. And you're like, oh, you got the bill? I was like, yeah, I got it. And he was like, okay, well, what do I owe you? I was like, then bro, it's a burger. You know what I mean? We just had a great time. It's all good. And then
But it was the lemonade I thought might have put it over the top for you. That lemonade was, yeah.
the lemonade was bomb. I wouldn't have got the lemonade if it had not been for you. But one thing caught me by surprise because John, he kind of looks at me after I said, yeah, it's all good. I got it. You know, you get the next one. He was just like, you're not gonna hit me with an invoice after this, are you? And I was like, bro, what you talking about? He's like, so I'm laughing and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, hell no, I'm not gonna hit you with an invoice. What are you talking about? He was like, oh, because it's happened to me. And I'm like, wait, you mean to tell me somebody sent you a Venmo request or whatever the case may be? What?
Yes.
So this is a teachable moment. Could you please, in whatever way you're able to talk about it, because I don't, you know, first of all, this ain't a very big podcast. It ain't going out too much.
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. You do stuff like that, you need to be out in my opinion.
It's a teachable moment.
In
right?
my opinion, right? Because you had the opportunity at that point in time, just like I offered to pay my share, right?
Right.
At the time, like real time, like, oh, you paid the bill, what do I owe you? Like you had the opportunity in that moment to say, oh, well, yours was, but don't say, no, I got it. And then come back and send me an invoice later, which was 36 hours later. I got an invoice. And in the memo, it said, our lunch at ... This was your half. The crazy thing is, this is somebody that actually wanted to do business with me. And I said, how do you think that's going to work? You can, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not shaming or belittling anyone.
Right.
Because this is not about the financial
No.
status
Way beyond that.
or ability, right? But for sure, if you don't have the ability to pay, just say yours is
Right. Like I could have.
right.
Or, I mean, I went to play Big Willie, right? I mean, I actually went to go use the restroom. It was perfect. The cash register is right there. So I'm passing by it.
Exactly.
So what I could have done is said, I could have come back with both, separated the bill,
Correct.
put the receipt down. Hey, here you go. I already took care of mine.
Exactly.
I'm going to use, you know, whatever. We've all been there. We've all done that. But I thought that move, it was unheard of for me. And so I was equally interested in how you responded. And if I remember correctly, you basically paid more than what it was worth. I think you, or something like
I
that.
paid the entire bill.
Yeah, because you knew what the amount was, so you
Right.
pay the entire bill and then said, okay, use this to pay it forward next time,
Right.
right? That's a teachable moment.
Yeah.
It's a very teachable moment. So it's like, to your point, if the conversation is not about, it's not about if you can afford it or not. It's about the gesture. It's about, don't spoil a moment in time because of some foolishness about an invoice and paying your half,
Yeah.
just be upfront. Anyway.
The dollar amount is the least significant aspect of the experience.
Yeah.
That's why they save it for the end,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, what did you order? Okay, cool. The food hasn't come out yet, but here's your bill. And you can tell the places that do that versus the ones that don't.
Yeah.
The experience is different. They're
Oh,
not
for sure.
selling an experience, they're selling food,
That's right.
right?
Well said. And I'll leave the audience with this one. I'll leave you with this one as well. Maybe it doesn't apply to you as much, but I think this conversation is also very important in the world of dating. So I'll just let that one simmer. John.
I am not in the dating world.
He's not. It doesn't apply to him, but I
Honey.
am.
Hey, honey, just so you know.
No. But like even for your kids or even for
Oh,
right?
1,000%.
Right?
1,000%.
Because you have a son and a daughter.
Correct.
I have a son and a daughter.
Correct.
I want to make sure that my son and my daughter, when they get older and old enough to date, they understand implications of actions, right?
My son just took this a quick little aside, but it flows into exactly what you're talking about. My son just took my wife on a 3-day trip to Spain. They went to Madrid.
It's amazing.
It is amazing because he just turned 19. So, most 19-year-olds don't want to have anything to do with their parents at that point. And he loves his mom, respects and cherishes his mom, right? So took her spontaneously to a trip to Spain. So when I found out they were going, now mind you, he paid for the tickets on his own. He booked the hotel reservation on his own, all of those things. Didn't ask me for a dime, okay? So I find out they're going after everything is already booked. I find out they're going. I'm calling him up and saying, hey, I'm so proud of you. This is amazing, blah, blah, blah. Hey, listen, if you need anything, let me know. I left a credit card in my valet. Take that with you just in case. And he's like, Dad, I appreciate that. I will just in case, but I got this. I got this for Mom, right? So, wow. When I hear that, like, I told my kids all the time, like when they say, I did this thing. Are you proud of me? My daughter she just won an award. I won't get into that, but then I'll start tearing up.
Yeah.
But she just won an award and she was like, I'm just trying to make you proud. And I said, what have I been telling you since you were old enough to remember? You always make me proud. There's not one thing you can do to make me proud because you're a great person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that makes me proud. Your accomplishments, that's just gravy on top, So to your point, be a great person. Like, how can you be a great person? Do those things. And in the process of being a great person, you will find and attract other great people.
That's right.
Charles Poliquin said, I'll never forget, took place right here in Manhattan. The very first strength and conditioning seminar I ever went to. It was a Poliquin seminar where I met who would become my first business partner in the fitness industry. And he said, you're only as good as your last client. And if you really care, you're only as good as your last session.
Oh,
that was a very long time ago. I've been coaching almost 30 years now.
damn.
That was a very long time ago. And as you can hear, I still remember it.
Wow.
I say that to myself every single time. Remember, I'm not a tennis coach, but when I step on the court, I am not just a tennis coach. I am the best tennis coach in the world in my mind. So how does that guy show up? How does he execute? How does he perform? How does he create the environment, the expectations, the standards, all the things? if I step into the gym right now, I'm that guy. I'm like, how do I do that? Because I'm trying to bring my best self into every environment that I can.
Well, if you haven't been intrigued enough at this point, well, I don't know what else is going to do it.
Or disgusting.
Yeah, maybe disgusting. But if you happen to be watching the U.S. Open, because I'm going to try to get this out next week, because it's very relevant.
No.
But look out for John. Very handsome young man here who is doing amazing things, and be on the lookout for it. Also, what are ways people can get in touch with you or follow what you're doing, like social media and things like that?
Sure. So on Instagram, actually both handles are the same. On Instagram and LinkedIn, probably two best places to find me. Instagram is at Elevate with John, all one word. Instagram and LinkedIn is the same.
Elevate with John.
Elevate with John.
There you go. Bro,
It's always good, man.
this has been good. We finally did
Yeah.
it. We've been talking about doing this for a while, but man, what a conversation.
I'm glad we had a chance to sit down
We'll
with
have to do it again.
for sure.
Yeah? All right. Until next time. Peace.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten your seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, you better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better go give us a lesson, yeah.
Simply walk the talk.